Yes? You had a bit?
Do you have a bit?
No, I do. I don't have a bit.
Why do I always have to carry this show?
Because you're funny. You love doing the bit.
Victor, no one's gonna believe you. Women aren't funny.
You love the bit. That's your bit
The
is
art
doing
of
the
the
bit.
bit.
That's the bit.
That's the book I'm gonna write posthumously
Bitcoin.
from the grave.
Bitcoin. Are you
I'm
a
gonna be the
Bitcoin
first
master?
ghost author that's literally a ghost. That was Jingle Bells, by the way.
Is this a Christmas episode?
Now it is.
It's not even December. This is.
Shut the fuck up!
Well, it probably is December now.
I was
when
gonna
this video
say,
comes out.
At the rate we edit videos, yes it is. Merry Christmas.
The rate I edit video.
Well, I was trying to take some of the blame
Some of
from
the
your
blame.
shoulders.
No, blame
but
me. I am the blame, or I am he who inherits the blame.
Yeah. We watched The Great Pretender.
Howdy, y'all. We just, a couple
didn't
weeks
just.
ago, we finished watching Netflix original series, original anime, The Great Pretender. Not The Great Pretender, just Great Pretender, I think. I don't think this is the...
Yeah.
Netflix has this thing where they hate the...
They hate
honestly,
articles.
Netflix might tell people that they can't put the in the title for the sake of their organization.
For alphabet purposes. Yeah.
That would be nice. Either way, it's Great Pretender, not The Great Pretender. Like that. Actually, that's the whole review. We just wanted to make that
Alright,
clear.
bye guys. Thanks for tuning
That's
in.
what
Don't
we were
forget
here
to
to
like
talk
and
about.
subscribe, ring that bell,
Yeah.
leave a comment.
So the second core of this just dropped on Netflix. It finished in Japan a while ago. We watched the first core on Netflix, and then finished it. Downloaded it a while ago.
No,
and
we
finished
didn't. We
and,
watched it completely legally.
Yes, we definitely watched it all legally.
How are we gonna get that sweet, sweet Netflix money if you keep sabotaging us?
Yeah. So anywho, what did you think of The Great Pretender? This was something that our fans were telling us to watch for a while. It seemed like it was
Yeah.
getting like an underground support.
A little bit of
like,
a cult.
Initially,
hit
no
there.
one was watching it, which obviously it's because it was on Netflix. That's why no one talked about it initially, because not
Well, it was
everyone
in Netflix
finds
jail
that.
for so long, yeah.
Yeah, because I was wondering why. I was like, well, I didn't see that in any of like the season episode roundups or whatever that like someone like Mother's Basement would do. And I was
Well,
like,
that's
oh, it's because
because
it's Netflix jail. That's why no
Mother's
one talked
Basement
about it.
Is cucked by the Netflix ban.
Yeah, so it had a slow community swell, and then people started talking about it when the first half dropped. Now the second half has been out for a few days, I think,
It's
and
been a
so
little bit longer than that, but yeah, it's been out for a
I'm
minute.
curious to see what the reception's gonna be, and if people still think it's as great as they did a few months ago. But what did you think of The Great Pretender?
I'd say it's pretty great. And then you add in the cheering sound effects and like a Curtis Connor-esque, like, I made a joke.
You did make a joke. What did you actually think of it? Did you think it was great?
No, I really thought it was pretty great. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
As with most shows in the modern era, it has a little bit of trouble sticking the landing.
Yeah.
But getting there is fun, and when you're dealing with a mystery heist sort of experience, the fun is really in unraveling the plot rather than getting to the end.
Yeah, the journey is more important than the destination, and that's definitely how I felt about this show. It was one of those where I thoroughly loved, I should say. I fucking loved 25 of 26 of these episodes. And the last episode, like, just really took me down. And it was, like, part of why we're recording this video so late is that, like, I had no steam coming out of the end of this show. Because I felt so just, like, how do I talk about this now without just talking about the ending and how disappointing it was for me, Because there's so much I could say about that. But I don't want it to reflect on the rest of the show and be like, it's so worth watching to me. And I don't think everyone's going to think that the ending was lame, you know?
I think
but it
some
was just
people
kind
will
of
be
like,
satisfied with it.
it was
It's just a
deflating,
little sloppy,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
But
But
it's-
for 25 really solid episodes with some
Yeah.
really solid characters who get great backstories, some of them, like, characters you rarely see explored in anime, I would still say it's very strong.
Yeah, and it's just it's a shame that I can't sing its praises from the heavens and be like,
Well,
anime
real,
masterpiece.
It's a real Carol and Tuesday
I was
situation.
gonna bring it around to Carol and Tuesday, another anime original that I loved 25 of 26 episodes of Carol and Tuesday, and it fucking just bails on the landing. It's jumping. It's on a skateboard. It takes off at the top of the stairs. It grinds the rail. It's just the longest rail, and it's grinding. And it's like, damn, that's a sick grind. Halfway through, he does a kickflip, and then he keeps grinding again. You're like, oh my god, you are nailing it. And then he fucking vaults off and just beefs into the concrete. Just high score ruined. You're not beating Tony Hawk.
The leg lands and it breaks at a 90-degree angle, and there's
he
a
had
bone
like
sticking
a
out.
X30 combo in Tony Hawk, and he just beefs, just like hundreds of thousands of points lost. That's how Carol and Tuesday felt. Great Pretender, less dramatic than that.
Yeah.
Not as disappointing as Carol and Tuesday was in the end, but still I didn't want to talk about it immediately afterwards because it was just like. I would end up coming off way too negative, and I don't want to be very negative because I did love this show, and I think that everyone should watch it. Especially, we'll get into it. We'll talk about it. If it sounds interesting, you watch it. If you're into heist style media, this is a fucking awesome, fun heist show. It has a perfect balance of like drama and happy-go-lucky attitude to never really feel stale or boring or overly serious or pretentious in any way.
I would say this is definitely one of the best heist anime.
Oh, for sure. It has some fucking great build-up and payoff throughout the arcs. Most of the arcs have the thing is, it's like the payoff of every other arc except for the last one was so good. That's why it's so disappointing in the end. Because, like, you're used to, like, it sets this bar of, like, awesome finishes for these arcs. And then it doesn't deliver on the last one to the extent that you hope, or it felt like they could have used like another episode, or they created a narrative framework that kind of undercut what they were trying to do in the end.
Yeah.
And it comes off very weird, but other than that, it's so solid and such a jolly good time, such a fun-loving romp. I had something else to say about it.
Did you?
But now I'm losing it. Anyways, we can get into what this show is about. Besides being a heist anime, it's sort of it focuses on a group of heisters, the Pretenders. What were they called? They had a name, right?
Men.
Yeah.
Or the Team Confidence is, I guess,
Confidence.
the name of the group, but they're not shysters. They're confidence men. That's how they like to refer to themselves.
But they kind of have like a Robin Hood mentality where they're a group of swindlers that only go after like rich pieces of shit.
Yeah.
Like they go for the richest people in the world, doing like the
They go
worst,
for your Jeff Bezoses.
Yeah, your Jeff Bezoses, but like, but Jeff Bezos, if you knew that he was up to no good on the side and like human trafficking and shit, like they kind of go through
he's
like
not doing that.
They go through almost progressively worse people as they sort of ramp up. Actually, really, it starts out bad, gets kind of neutral, and then gets really bad at the end.
And then you're like, oh
in terms
god,
of the people they're busting. But you follow your main character Edamura, or Edamame, as they like to call him,
yes,
and he's
they like to tease him.
He's a Japanese boy.
Japanese boy.
And he's kind of scouted in the beginning by what's his name? Laurent, the French blonde man. Fuckboy. He is a hell of a fuckboy. But he's like the sort of the leader of this organization of pretenders. And so he scouts our boy Edamame in the beginning because he needs a Japanese man to be part of his next scheme. And so that he's like roped in by this guy and essentially tricked in a roundabout way, which is kind of the arc of his character. He's always getting roped into these situations that he doesn't want to be in because he's a good boy, and he's always being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
In hilarious ways where he ends up consenting to what he's being roped into, but like he is not consenting to having been roped into it in the first place. It's always some grandiose, ridiculous plan to get him.
He begrudgingly ends up accepting the role.
Yeah, like overall vibe of this, it's like Lupin the Third. If Lupin the Third actually had really complex and interesting multi-episode plots. I don't know if the newer Lupin shows get there, but it's like,
I have no idea.
you know, it's that classic sort of like you're following international espionage, like bad guy who is only really going after bad. Like Lupin is a thief. He's a bad guy, you know.
Yeah,
but he only
technically a
really
bad guy.
steals from other bad guys most of the
Right.
time.
I would say this show is like Lupin the Third by way of Uchoten Kazoku.
Yeah.
The aesthetics of this show, the way the characters are, their personality types, and how they're like very colorful and unique.
Yeah.
It's all very reminiscent of Uchoten Kazoku for me. Which is
Super.
a very high compliment. I love Uchoten Kazoku.
Yeah, interesting, unique characters. They actually have a very diverse cast for anime.
They do.
Like,
There's a Middle Eastern girl as one of the primary characters.
she has one of the most
Very
interesting
unusual.
arcs. So spoiler for her, but like Abigail, she is a Middle Eastern terrorist. Like she
Well, a child soldier.
yeah, she was a child soldier because her hometown gets airstriked by the U.S. military in the
Obabe.
beginning. Fucking Obabe.
Obabe Ketsu.
Balak Mbabe fucking airstrikes her town. And so she becomes a child soldier, like, in the war in Afghanistan or whatever.
I think
can't
it's
remember if
in
it was-
Baghdad.
yeah, Baghdad or something. Yeah, it was Baghdad. But yeah, she becomes a child soldier and is involved in all that. And it's just like this extremely interesting, unique backstory for an anime character.
It's very unusual for an anime to touch on something like that.
Yeah, it gets into world politics and sort of like drugs and war in ways that anime is just usually nowhere near covering. Like the first arc is about drug trade in America
Yeah.
and Hollywood and stuff.
I would suspect this show was made very strongly with an American audience in mind.
Oh, definitely. Well, it was a Netflix anime original thing, so like
There's
I
plenty
think,
of Netflix original anime that don't feel like they're made particularly for the American audience.
I think they generally tend
they
to
might veer
approach
harder
that
into
way.
it, but this is like Cowboy Bebop levels of catering to the Americans.
Because it's got the jazz soundtrack, it's got the very Cowboy Bebop opening, you know, and I think a lot of Netflix original anime has been trying to hit that like Western appeal on the nail. It's just they tend to like a lot of the times I feel like they either don't really understand what picks up in the West, or they're trying to recreate something that they don't
It's not
understand
gonna be,
very well.
Yeah, it's
you
lightning
know?
in a bottle, and you're not going to
Lightning
get
in a
it
bottle.
twice.
And they're not putting in the effort in the writing and the mileage, but like this show has really good writing throughout the most of it until the very end.
Yeah, I mean, the characters are extremely, like, consistent. You understand their motivations, where they're coming from, why they're acting the way they act.
They're super likable. They fit into a lot of great scenarios.
Yeah.
And they just construct really good plots and circumstances for the characters to interact with in fun and interesting ways. I'm not sure if I need to like go over every arc and
I mean, I
and
don't think so.
spoil it, but,
I
like,
think if
I
this
wanna
sounds
talk about what's
interesting to you,
interesting, yeah.
then you should definitely go watch it. It's great. It's super fun. It's the kind of show where you sit there and you watch a couple episodes and then you're like, oh shit, well I guess I
Yeah.
gotta go to bed, and you're still like, man, but I wish I could stay up and watch more.
Yeah, I mean,
which
we
happens
burned
so
through it.
rarely for us. Like very rarely do I watch a show, especially like a seasonal show, and we watch like 4 episodes and then I'm like, man, I really want to keep watching. I want more.
Yeah.
Like it's usually like, okay, I need a break from this. This is an I need my week break, and then I'm gonna come back to it.
Yeah.
But I feel like this show you could really binge it and it would be a lot of fun.
We were blasting through it. And because it's the arcs are separated into like 4 to 6 episodes, and so
Yeah.
it's just like you just want to boom, 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 get through it because it just leaves you on great cliffhangers. It has lots of exciting shit going on. It seems like the dub might be pretty okay.
I'm sure the
'cause
dub's probably fine.
We accidentally started on the dub because the
It was
dub
very
actually
confusing.
like the dub starts off using the Japanese vocal track because there's a point where the characters go from Japan to the United States, and it's made a point in the Japanese version and the English version that Edamame has a fucked up English.
He's a horrible
Yeah,
Japanese accent to his English.
yeah, he's speaking English with a terrible accent, and so the show tells you everything that is spoken in English will now be translated to Japanese, and so the rest of the show is all Japanese, but they give you an excuse for why these characters are speaking Japanese
When they're in America.
So it's really that all the characters are speaking English for the rest of the show, and French and all these other languages, but they translate it for you. And it was a funny bit. And it was interesting because in the dub, they switched from using the Japanese vocal track speaking English in Jinglish to switching to English voice acting. And so up to
But
that
it's
point,
an
we
English
had
voice
been...
actor doing an impression of like a Japanese accent to English.
It was super odd.
It's very strange, especially when your brain, like you're in your mind, you think you're watching the Japanese dub, and then you hear this and you're like, what?
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's in English, and I'm like, wait a minute, are we watching the dub? What the fuck's going
I
on
was
here?
very confused.
Well, I like that they did that for the dub, that they started off in
it's
Japanese
a good
and
touch.
everything.
It means
pretty cool.
it means that they actually like cared and tried to make
Yeah.
something interesting and unique.
But that touch made me... And then when we switched it to Japanese, the characters sounded exactly the same. So, like, that also...
It's pretty
It seems like
close.
they were finding people that match pretty well. And it... Like, given the material of this, I feel like it wouldn't feel weird to watch this dubbed if
Because
you
it's so
wanted.
multicultural
Yeah.
that I think this is a show that you'd watch the dub and you could totally get
Exactly.
Yeah,
Sort of
it'd feel
like
natural.
people used to say they love the dub for Bakano because Bakano takes place in the United States.
Because
So, like,
Bakano
it
has
makes
the
sense.
accents.
Yeah, and they have the accents.
I
whereas
love the accents
in Japanese,
in Bakano.
it's just people in America speaking Japanese, which doesn't really make
The
any
real
sense. So,
Tracer.
yeah, I understand those arguments for dubs if they aren't too cringe. This one seemed like it could be okay if you're looking for casual viewing on Netflix.
That being said, of course, the Japanese dub is still great.
Yeah, some other things I enjoyed. Season 2 talk fucking... they get into human trafficking, which this is an odd part about season 2, is that like they're ramping up with like the edginess of the subjects they're tackling, and then they get into season 2 and it's about human trafficking. And there's an odd feeling in season 2 that it's not being like critical enough of the human trafficking.
Yeah.
Like-
They seem like they take it a little too lightly.
There's an odd line, and like Edamura is really passionate about like trying to save all the kids in the human trafficking operation, but like no one else really cares.
Yeah, everyone else is just concerned about extorting the money out of the traffickers.
Yeah, and one thing I want to talk about with like I want to talk about the ending because I know the comments are gonna talk about the ending, and I have some thoughts on it because I want to explain why I hated the ending so much or thought it was so fucking weird. And the biggest thing is that in the end, in the climax, they had the three villains from the other arcs. Like, each of them, you know, they bust them, they take their money, they put them in jail or whatever.
Yeah.
And so,
Middle Eastern guy who rigs the plane races, and the art dealer.
Yeah. It's not
Forger
super
guy.
important, like, who they are or what they did.
You know, but that's, you know.
Well, to an extent, it's
circle
important
back
because,
in.
like, the American guy is the worst one. He was a drug tycoon, you know? Like, this was a bad guy.
He was Breaking Bad, yeah.
Probably
I would say,
responsible for a lot of murders, you know?
And I'm pretty sure they commented on people, like, dying because of the drug trade. Like,
The Middle Eastern guy, little less hardcore. He wasn't, he wasn't directly killing anyone, I think, you know?
he's just an asshole because he's a
Yeah,
misogynist.
the art guy, I mean, huge piece of shit. Not that much of a scumbag, but like, that's kind of a high society scumbag where it's like he's only ripping off
that's
other
like a real
douchebags,
upper class
you know?
problem.
And like, yeah, he was very problematic, but not as bad as like the American film director who's a drug tycoon. Like, he is the head of a drug organization. He's bad. And so in the climax, like, in order to take down the human traffickers, they collaborate with the three villains from the other arcs. And they're like all here on a yacht, and they're all like buddy, and
They're all just chilling out, man.
and it's like
Throwing down.
they explain that they were all able to get out on bail for whatever they were doing, and they have so much money that it's like they got ripped off. It didn't really matter.
Yeah,
they have so
basically,
much money at the drop of the
There
bucket.
were no consequences to any of the actions that were taken in the show. They didn't feel any hurt for the things they did wrong. They weren't punished in any particular way.
Yeah.
Just like, which is realistic. That's how the real world works.
It's very realistic, but it doesn't come across as critical of that in any way, which was weird. It's kind of like, haha, you guys got us. And they're like, oh, you
Capitalism.
bastards, we got you, you're fine now. You know, it's like, no, these are scumbags.
Haha, you
Don't
guys-
associate with these scumbags.
It's just a prank, bro.
Like, I know you're trying to take out human traffickers, which are much, much worse. But then in the end, when they take out the human traffickers, they just, like, they take a bunch of money from them, which seems like a drop in the bucket for
Right.
these
It's like,
people.
these
It's not a
guys-
big deal.
Are so far beyond the level of whatever money they took from them.
And then they don't really stop the human trafficking operation.
No, not really.
It could very well continue.
They strand them on an island,
Yeah.
but like someone's gonna find them,
yeah,
and then they're gonna get right back to trafficking kids.
They get stuck on an island. It's like, oh no,
So-
they didn't learn anything. We didn't put them in jail. They're just on an island. And it's like, I get that you know, you can make the argument of, oh, if you put them in prison, they just get out anyways because they're so rich, it doesn't matter. But it's like, but we didn't stop anything. It's just it's a weirdly realistic take in the way that it.
But they're not critical of it.
Yeah,
at
it's
all,
so
like you
happy-go-lucky at the end, and it's just like,
like,
oh, these human
ain't
traffickers.
that the way, though?
But then after, it's like the whole season was Edamura like really struggling with like being involved in this human trafficking operation when he's undercover as part of the scheme, and he's like really struggling with it, and he really wants to stop them. But it's like, in the end, stranding them on an island, that was enough.
And
taking a little money, and it's like they end up like they saved a bunch of kids, and they're working on getting them into foster care and stuff. And it's like they have this active operation where they're trying to help kids who are victims of this. But
Which
they
is
aren't
great, but...
doing enough to try to stop it systematically. I don't know. But then I guess what can you do? It's weird. It's just weird the way they handled it.
How, like, blasé the show is about it. Just like, yeah. I did appreciate, like, I really like the way they portray, like, Edamame, obviously, he has a deep emotional problem with the human trafficking of these kids, but he's also developed this relationship with the lady who runs the human trafficking.
Yeah, that was really cool.
And he sees, like, the human part of her, and she, like, lets him into her very personal life, and, like, she kind of, like, takes him in as her son, and it's a very authentic relationship, and you can tell they're both really invested in it, which is why it's very difficult for him to pull the rug out from under her, even though what she's doing is absolutely disgusting and is not permissible under any circumstances.
It gets really dramatic and odd and cool, and like it's a great arc because like the whole show was like season 1 is all setting up for season 2, where there's this mystery with his dad, and it turns out his dad is part of, you know, the Pretender Society and all this shit, and all these cool twists that were set up from the very beginning. And season 2 just delivers and delivers on all of the setup they had done. Like, his whole life purpose was to go on this mission in season 2 and stop these human traffickers. And they did a great job of building to that and having it be centered around all that. But then it's just the way that it reaches the conclusion is like, we spent years developing this plan. This was the plan. The whole show was about this. Everything was about this. Everyone's backstory was tied into this human trafficking group. What's his name? Fucking... Laurent. His whole deal. They tried to stop the human traffickers before. The human traffickers murdered his girlfriend, you know? It's like he has a huge vindictive, like, revenge thing going on. And it's like... And really, it's a really cool backstory, but then he doesn't really get to sort of savor that revenge in any sort of interesting way. He just kind of gets the money. And it's like, that was enough for you?
But I mean, that is kind of how revenge is, you know? Everyone likes to build it up like it's going to be really cathartic when it's often very empty.
Yeah.
I think the funniest thing about it is that, like, when the curtains are pulled back and you see the full reason as to how all of this has been orchestrated for years and years and years, and it all just hinges on Lauren's girlfriend having been murdered. They did it all for her! Not to stop human trafficking!
Okay,
they did it for her!
It was a combination of both, because they were already trying to stop the human trafficking, and I think Edamame's dad was very invested in that aspect of it, but they did, in the end, do it for her. They did it for her.
It was a lot for her.
She was like the previous leader of their group, kind of.
I just think it's kind of silly. Yeah. And I mean, I completely... When Edamame, like, freaks out at the end when they're in the chairman's boardroom and they have that confrontation with his dad and Lauren.
That's such a weird scene.
And I'm like, well, I completely understand, because he feels like he's been jerked around for this entire time because this guy's girlfriend died. Yeah. I'd be pissed too. I get it.
Exactly.
I'd be like, and my dad went along with this? Fuck you! Eat shit!
And then it's like, you know, like they were motivated enough to do it to do it for her. And then Laurent doesn't really get like that much of like an emotional
payoff
resolution for it in the end. It focuses more on Edamura. I don't know. It's just so weird.
It's pretty cruel, if you ask me, that his dad was willing to like make such a sacrifice, set his son on a path of a life of crime, of being completely alone. His mom dies of an illness when he's like 16 or 17, sets him on this path of crime. He fucking goes to jail, and then he lets him continue to be manipulated by his friends, while the whole time he could have come to him and said, hey, here's the deal. We need... And I get part of Edamame's fault is that he's, like, so honest, and he sometimes can't keep these things to himself because he's, like, moral to a fault.
the unique way that he is used in the situations is that he can't know what's going on
because it will ruin the illusion.
And because he has like this improvisational skill, you know, where it's like they give him fewer details so he can be kind of this wild card that fits into these situations where it kind of always hinges on him not knowing what's going on. Because then he makes the right decisions in the right moments to reach the desired outcomes that they're kind of manipulating. But, like, they need him not to know what's happening to get there.
All these schemes hinge on him being kept in the dark, and his dad is totally okay with this. He's totally okay with his son feeling like he's completely alone in the world and has been utterly betrayed by everyone around him.
Yeah.
He has nothing. He's, like, utterly depressed for half the show. It's like, so you're okay with throwing your child into the pit of despair so that maybe one day you can get revenge on this ring for killing someone else's girlfriend. Not the best parenting, my friend.
It's
not the
bad.
best. Not the best. I'd be pretty pissed at you, too.
Yeah. And it's, like, dramatically for the show, it's awesome.
Oh, yeah, for the show, I mean...
Great payoffs and everything.
Shit, Dad, but
like,
great for drama for the show.
Yeah, it gets very odd. Very, very odd.
Perhaps worse than Hohenheim.
Like, the way it just wraps up in the end is just kind of like, oh.
Maybe worse than Aaron's dad. Who knows?
And then season 1 was so fun, you know? And season 2 was a lot of fun, you know?
Oh, they're all, all the seasons, like, are have their own, like, fun elements to them.
Anyways, yeah, that's our thoughts on Great Pretender. We don't need to fucking spend 2 hours talking about it or anything, but, definitely check it out if it seems interesting.
It's all on Netflix.
Let us know what you thought in the comments if you enjoyed it. We enjoyed it a lot. Yeah. Even though we're highly critical of it. You know, you could be critical of things.
Oh my god.
And
imagine enjoying something and being critical of it.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
Don't regret. Will it be a top anime of 2020? I'm not sure.
Maybe.
You know? Not sure. Just like Carol and Tuesday was my favorite anime of 2019 until the last episode, you know? Watched it twice. It was just like, oh, I'm so in love with this show. It's so cool. I love it. It's quirky and it's stupid, but like I love it. It's just made for me. And then in the end, you're like, oh god, everyone was right. This is dumb as fuck. All right, bye.